I'm Steve Darnall, and you're listening to Those Were the Days. We're here every Saturday afternoon from 1 to 5, presenting old-time radio on 90.9 FM, listener-supported WDCB and WDCB HD1 Glen Ellen, and worldwide on the internet at WDCB.org.
Get your paper.
And that sound brings Ken Alexander to the microphone. Ken, you look like you have a Chicago Tribune with you there.
Oh, that I do,
and
Steve.
From the size of it, I'm going to guess it's a Sunday Tribune, which makes me think that it's from August the 3rd of 1958, the same date as our Frontier Gentleman program.
That's right, Sunday Tribune. Well, let's see.
Lift with the legs when you bring those in, right?
Pardon me?
You have to lift with the legs when you bring
they're pretty heavy. The graphic section and a lot of ads and the Sunday funnies and everything else. Big story here. ICBM rocket launched on spaceflight from Cape Canaveral, Florida. It says the fully powered Atlas intercontinental ballistic missile thundered aloft Saturday on its first successful test journey into space. The 100-ton three-engine rocket was the mightiest war weapon ever launched by the Western world. Spectacular shoot boosted United States ICBM prestige and offset a dismal failure July 19th when the first three-engine Atlas blew up high in the sky. The Atlas blasted aloft at 5:16 p.m. Chicago time, propelled by twin booster rockets and a main sustainer engine turning at full throttle. The missile climbed straight up, accelerating rapidly for about 50 seconds, and then pitched over to a more level course and darted toward the southeast at the start of a 15,000-mile-per-hour flight. And here's a picture of this Atlas going up as it was launched, going straight up, and below it is a huge white cloud of smoke or vapor.
Mm-hmm.
Boy.
Yes, we were truly in a new age.
Yes, that's for sure. Here's another picture on the front page of a freight train crashed near Hammond, Indiana, on a bridge over U.S. Highway 30. These cars strewn all over the landscape there.
Oh, my goodness.
Let's see here. Another story here from Washington. The United States announced recognition Saturday of Iraq's new revolutionary government, which seized power in a military coup marked by violence and bloodshed July 14th. In extending diplomatic recognition to the government, which sparked the latest crisis in the Middle East, the United States was seen as giving Russia an answer by action to Russia's charges that Western powers in Baghdad participants were preparing aggression against Iraq. And
of course, that Iraq would that particular revolution would be greeted by another revolution about 2 decades later.
Yeah.
Anyway, you were saying.
Members, this is a local story, members of the 40 and 8 Fun and Humor Society of the American Legion climaxed their part in the Illinois Legion's 40th annual convention Saturday night by staging a torchlight parade through the Loop, watched by an estimated 50,000 persons. Spectators were treated to a generous share of traditional 40 and 8 antics by the marchers and riders in a huge assortment of strange and antiquated vehicles, always in evidence of the Society's marches. 300 Chicago policemen lined the parade route.
What is that society?
40 and 8. I think back in the old days, there were these, freight cars that some of the soldiers rode in when they were being transported, and they would hold 40 men or 8 horses. They call it the 40 and 8.
Okay.
That's something that Laura, I may be mistaken on that, but that's where they
interesting.
40 and 8. Weather forecast August of 1958.
I was going to say I have an inkling of what we're going to hear, but go ahead.
Well, we're in the dog days of summer.
Mm-hmm.
It's a sunny and warmer Sunday, high around 90, low near 70. Winds becoming westerly 10 to 15 miles an hour. I guess it's pretty typical for
And if you've just tuned in, that's a forecast for August 3rd, 1958.
That's right.
So don't take that as your guide for tomorrow.
Here's Bond's clothing store. They have an ad inside here. Men, no breaking in, just pure pleasure. These are shoes. They're called Bermuda Softies. Now, they are made of brushed buck in desert tan or charcoal gray, and they are quite a bit like the brand patented hush puppies.
Oh, sure.
But they're not hush puppies, but they are made of that soft leather, and they're $5.99. Very comfortable, lightweight, comfortable. Here's an ad for Lane Bryant for women's coats, rain or shine coats, regularly $25 to $35, $12. And Carson Peary Scott, there's State and Madison there. Now it's a Target store.
That's right.
And they have in the basement, hey fellows, August package sale, wash and wear dress shirts, 2 for $5. 4 for $9.90. You buy 4, you save a dime. Right? Inside here, the television shows, and for 1958.
Oh, of course. Probably more television listings than radio listings at this
That's
point.
right. That's right. You're right, Steve. Television, well, earlier in the afternoon, they had Flash Gordon, Meet the Press, The Lone Ranger, Joe Palooka.
I apologize. I'm just thinking of a movie called Flash Gordon Meets the Press.
Meets the Press.
Yeah, I would pay good money for that.
Yeah. Joe Palooka, You Asked For It, and Lassie. And then later, that Bachelor Father. Steve Lawrence and Edie Gourmet at his show. Guests Paul Lind, Peter Lawford, Kathy Crosby, and Sherry Lewis.
My.
And we had Meet Corliss Archer on TV. And now this next show is not on Me Too TV or Antenna TV. This show is, for the first time, Alfred Hitchcock Presents. You've never seen this before, not a rerun. It's called The Last Request with Harry Gardino.
This reminds me of that scene in Back to the Future where Michael J. Fox's character ends up with his mother at her house when she's his age, and the Honeymooners is on, and he says, "Oh, I've seen this one," and they're looking like, "How?"
Yeah. Well, this was the original Alfred Hitchcock. Nobody's seen that episode before. Now, this, reading the listings here, but this is an ad for a special show here on TV. It's called The Ed Sullivan Show, which I think was really known as Toast of the Town, wasn't it? The same thing?
Well, I think it started out as Toast of the Town, but eventually I think it became the Ed Sullivan Show.
In 1958, huh?
Very likely.
Oh, okay, that's it then. And by the way, it's sponsored by the Lincoln Mercury dealers. Nowadays, one advertiser would find it impossible to sponsor a 1-hour network TV show. They have participating sponsors, you know.
That's right.
Back then, the Lincoln Mercury sponsored the whole show. Well, would you like me to read the lineup
for
guests?
For 1958? By all means.
All right, they had a Canadian comedy team, Wayne and Schuster.
Sure.
Singer Dolores Gray. Comedian Jack E. Leonard. Billy Albert and the Ardrey sisters, a vocal combo. Margaret Tynes, New York opera star in a scene from Porgy and Bess. And Dieter Tasso, an unusual wire-walking act. All on the Ed Sullivan Show.
And nothing about the Polish dentists?
And 742 Polish dentists. I heard some comedian say it once, and I always remember that. Now, radio programs, that's Sunday afternoon and evening, August 15th. There wasn't much left. NBC had Monitor in the afternoon and evening.
That's right.
And CBS, they still had several shows. We're going to hear Country Gentleman, and that was heard
Frontier Gentleman.
Pardon me, Country Gentleman, Frontier Gentleman. That was at 6 o'clock Chicago time, or pardon me, it was heard at wherever. But whatever it was 6 o'clock Chicago time. But it wasn't heard in Chicago.
Oh, is that right?
They had a show called All That Jazz, probably a local show.
We've encountered this before in the later days of the Golden Age of Radio, and one reason that the Golden Age of Radio ended when it did is that the shows were still being broadcast by the network, but not all the affiliates saw that as the best use of their time.
I have a theory about this particular Sunday afternoon, which I'll get to. Frontier Gentleman, that was not heard in Chicago. Johnny Dollar was at 8:30 p.m., and Gunsmoke was at 5:30, which is the time it was broadcast on the network. But Suspense, broadcast on the network at 3:30, heard here at 9 p.m., and the FBI in Peace and War was on the network at 4:30, but here it was 6:30. And my theory, see if you'll agree Mal Belair's was a legendary disc jockey, been with the WBBM many years, and he had a nice, mature way about it. He didn't play any rock and roll. He played songs appealing to people in their 30s and 40s and so forth, and a good personality. He would say, you call the listeners neighbors, how are you, neighbor? And he had a show on Monday through Friday, of course, on BBM, and also Sunday from 2 until 5 p.m.
Oh.
And he'd call the listeners the Sunday afternooners. And he also did freelance commercials, which are heard on different stations. Fernstrom Movers, the White Fence Farm, and Niles Savings. His voice was familiar to nearly everybody. So I think that he had very good ratings. I'm sure that BBM didn't want to mess with Mal Belair's. So let's take this FBI and Peace and War and Suspense, which were on when Mel Belair's was on. We'll transcribe them and play them later in the evening.
Sure.
You agree with that?
I think that's very likely, you know, and that was happening in a lot of places, you know, that the fact that, you know, they were finding it was more effective in term financially to put one person on with their record players.
Yeah.
And, of course, thanks to recording tape, they could record the feed of a show like Suspense and then put it on 4 hours later. So
You're right.
that doesn't surprise me, I guess.
Yeah. Let's see, some entertainment around town.
The nightlife. This should be good.
Schubert Theater had My Fair Lady with Michael Evans and Ann Rogers. At the Opera House, they're showing a film, a Windjammer, in Cinemiracle. Cinemiracle.
Don't know that.
And Riverview, Laugh Your Troubles Away and Pack a Picnic, Bring the Family, 100 Rides, Picnic Groves, Riverview. And the Conrad Hilton had, in the Boulevard Room, Ice Review. And we were talking about the Summer Theater last week, 1949. Well, here it's 9 years later, 1958, but Summer Theater was alive and well. The Shady Lane Theater, there was just, pardon me, on Highway 20 at 3 miles east of Marengo, Illinois. They had the Mousetrap, a comedy. Now here, it says all New York cast. Well, maybe that was a big deal in 1958, but today, no, I think a Chicago cast would do just as well.
Very likely.
As a New York cast. And then...
You know, it is interesting to note that we're talking 1958. I mean, someone who knows more about theatrical history could correct me on this, but I think Chicago theater as its own scene was just beginning to come into its own. The Second City had just started a few years earlier, but I mean, so many of the companies we think of now, like Steppenwolf, they were years away from forming.
More Summer Theater. The Music Theater of the North Shore, between Edens and Skokie Boulevard, or Skokie Highway, rather, at Lake Cook Road. They had Fanny playing now, last time tonight, and then opening on the 17th, or opening tomorrow through the 17th, Brigadoon. The Tent House Theater, Skokie Highway and Highland Park. They had the Tea House of the August Moon. And the Hinsdale Summer Theater, Rosemary DeCamp and Sidney Blackmer in separate tables. And this is not suburban, this is in Chicago. The Edgewater Beach Playhouse in the Edgewater Beach Hotel on Sheridan Road, and Sheridan in Kind Sir. And outside Summer Theater. Then the film Gigi playing at the Harris Theater. And Around the World in 80 Days at Todd Cinestage. The Lawrence Welch Show at the International Amphitheater tomorrow at 8:30 p.m.
Wonderful.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. Some films downtown. Cary Grant and Ingrid Bergman in Indiscreet at the United Artists. Walt Disney's The Light in the Forest at the Garrick. Also Walt Disney's Paul Bunyan. Chicago, there are no vaudeville on the movie theaters.
No stage presentations of any kind, probably, no.
The Elvis Presley and the King Creole at the Chicago. State Lake had the Vikings with Kirk Douglas and Tony Curtis and Ernest Borgnine, Janet Leigh. United Artists, Frank Sinatra, Tony Curtis, again, and Natalie Wood and Kings Go Forth. At the Roosevelt, you could see William Holden, Sophia Loren, and Trevor Howard in the Key. And the Garrick Theater had Peter Pan, Walt Disney's Peter Pan. I just mentioned the Walt Disney, that's starting Wednesday at the Garrick, The Light in the Forest, and Paul Bunyan. South Pacific, McVickers Theater, they did in Tadeo.
Oh, that's right. Of course, this is the movie version, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
The Oriental had Twilight for the Gods with Rock Hudson and Sid Charisse. The best-selling books in Chicago back in August of 1958. In fiction, Anatomy of a Murder, The Image Makers, The Enemy Camp, Ice Palace by Edna Ferber, The Portuguese Escape, The Winthrop Woman, Strangers When We Meet, and The Time of the Dragons. Then nonfiction, Inside Russia Today by John Gunther, Masters of Deceit by J. Edgar Hoover, The Cattlemen, Kids Say the Darndest Things by Art Linkletter, and Dear Abby by the now late Abigail Van Buren, The Ordeal of Woodrow Wilson by Herbert Hoover. Harry Von Zelda, Hubert Heaver, what he did. Only in America by Harry Golden, and How to Do Nothing with Nobody All Alone by Yourself by Robert Paul Smith.
Well, we're used to that.
Polk Brothers, Zenith TV at all Polk stores, $249.95.
Wow.
And then here's a laundry ad. Edgewater Laundry at 5533 Broadway, 30 pounds, $3.94 the price. Shirts, 11 cents. Beautifully finished. What? Here's something about an article about James Thurber.
Oh,
famous cartoonist and writer of humor. He wrote The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. There was a film made in 1947, Danny Kaye in the title role.
That's right.
Secret Life of Walter Mitty. I'll just read a couple of paragraphs from this, if I may. Well, he became blind later in life, James Thurber, which is terrible for a cartoonist. He says, my drawing, I've never taken it seriously. I can't draw anymore at all. I tried it with a luminous pencil when I was getting real blind, but even then, this didn't work. He takes the loss of his sight seriously, but says, when someone doesn't bring up the subject, I usually do. When you're blind, you naturally take a great interest in eyes. I want to write about the human eye because it occurs to me that the human being knows less about it than any other part of the body. He considers it a delicate organ. It's the toughest thing in the body. The eye is the one part of the body that is the same size at birth as at maturity. That's why all babies are beautiful. One other thing he says here, interesting. Did you ever own a dog? The interviewer asked Mr. Thurber. And he says, dogs, Thurber says, I've owned 70 dogs since I was a boy. Dogs have a sense of humor, especially the French poodle. They don't use them as police dogs, and that's not because they are too dumb, but because they're too smart. I played a joke on my dog once. He didn't particularly like it. You know, you can carry a joke against a dog too far. For 3 days, my dog wouldn't shake hands. James Thurber. He was to die 3 days later, 3 years later, in 1961. Talked about that crash of a freight train in Hammond on page 1. There's a picture here. There's an article. 6-man crew of a New York Central freight train was enjoying breakfast Saturday in a waffle shop near Hammond when misfortune overtook the train, halted a short distance away. When the dust cleared, nearly 30 cars of the train were scattered along the 25-foot-high right-of-way embankment in a crazy tangle of wood, metal, and cargo, grain, coal, and general merchandise, including some tractors spilled from the cars. Some of the grain poured onto the U.S. Highway 30, disrupting auto traffic. Several cars were perched precariously at the edge of the overpass above the motorists. The mishap, actually involving 2 freight trains, took place atop the railroad's overpass over U.S. Highway 30, about 3 miles south of Hammond, near the intersection of U.S. Highways 30 and 41. Well, that's about all we have time for in the newspaper today. Steve, 1958 August, your hit parade had concluded its long run on radio, so I don't have a hit parade song for you.
You know, I know there was no hit parade in August of 1958, Ken, but there was the Billboard pop charts.
Yeah.
So maybe we could hear the #1 song in America as told to us by Billboard.
Oh, why not?
And it's one that actually has a connection to the golden age of radio, courtesy of Mr. Rick Nelson.